Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Two Sons Podcast. Um, I am your co-host, Philip, and in today's episode, it is going to be just me. Obviously, there were some things that came up, some adult issues, just some everyday life stuff, for our fellow host. To make a long story short, he has a pretty big test coming up, so he wanted to make sure he had plenty of time to study and rest. So for myself and the rest of our Two Song Podcast family, let's just give him a round of applause and just give him all the best well and merry wishes that we can, and hope that everything goes well with the test. So our hearts and prayers are with you, Joey. So hopefully you do well in this test, and yeah. But with that out of the way, like I said, welcome back to another wonderful episode of Two Sons Podcast. I am your co-host Philip, of course, and it is just going to be me today. This is going to be a slightly shorter episode. I don't really have a time limit, but I'm just going to basically talk until I feel like I got my point across, as I do not want to just sound like a broken record. Um, so yeah, so today we're gonna do a little something different. For those of you that have been, following Star Wars and are fans of Star Wars and everything, you know that season three of the Bad Batch has came out recently. And as of this recording, they are about four episodes in. Now, obviously, me and my brother, we want to do an episode breakdown for you guys, similar like we did with the Ahsoka series, because it seems like everybody enjoyed that a lot, and we had a good time recording it too. So we definitely want to bring you guys a um a Bad Batch review, similar to how we did for Ahsoka. But unfortunately, obviously, we have to have both of us here for that. And but don't worry, it is coming soon. We definitely will be a little behind, so don't expect us to, talk about all five episodes. Um, when they by the time we get back and we probably record together, there's gonna be five episodes. Don't expect five episodes in one video recording. But I do promise you that we are going to be having a show review of the Bad Batch. It is only fitting because if for those of you that don't know, and if for those of you that have been here since day one of the YouTube channel for Two Sons Podcast, we actually started our YouTube channel on the Bad Batch. It was actually one of the very first videos that we recorded for the YouTube. Of course, we were doing it on Spotify anyway, but it was the first video version that we actually had for this podcast. So I believe we went over seasons one and two, or we went over season one, I believe. I'm not too sure. I think we were preparing for probably season two's release. So we were probably going over like a breakdown of like season one, maybe. Um, so yeah, so it would be fitting if we got to talk about the end of Bad Batch on this channel, just like how we talked about the beginning. So, but yeah, definitely look out for that in the future. But for this week, I definitely wanted to get a video out for you guys, at least myself. So like I said, what better way than to sit here and talk to you guys? So my video today is going to focus around something that I've been getting a lot of interest in lately. Um, Another part of my life, of my nerdom and fandom and whatever you want to call it, is expanding into another genre. And that genre, my dear friends, is Dungeons and Dragons. Um, yes, Dungeons and Dragons, from the Big Bang Theory, from Young Sheldon, so on and so forth. The game that has been around for decades, that have been inspired by the works of J.R.R. Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, has been popularized in media and novels, obviously tabletop games, and a couple of films here and there, of course. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. And specifically, we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons Honor Amongst Thieves, which was the most recent Dungeons and Dragons movie to come out. If my memory serves me correctly when I looked, so let me just double check. The movie came out March 1st of 2023. I'm sorry, did I say March 1st? I'm sorry, March 31st of 2023. So not too far behind. I mean, looking at the calendar, it's almost March, so it's going to come up on its 1 year anniversary. But yeah, we're going to be talking about that movie. I mean, obviously, this review is long in the making, um, but because my love for Dungeons and Dragons is slowly but surely growing, I thought, what better way to do a solo episode by just kind of talking about the movie a little bit. I mean, we're not going to go into like a full in-depth review and take our glasses and nitpick everything. But we're just gonna go over my own personal thoughts, how I enjoyed it, and some things I liked about it positively, and some things that were like, and just kind of go from there. Um, so before we dive into that, as we usually do, I'm going to tell you guys how I'm doing. So overall, I'm doing pretty good. I just hit the midway mark when it came to my spring semester. I just took a midterm actually today. So I'm about halfway through my semester. So that is, of course, great news. That means that, I only have a little bit more to go, before I could relax for a little bit before I go on to the next semester. But, so far, thankfully, everything has been going well. My academics have been going strong, good grades across the board. Can't really complain about that. So school is going pretty good for me. Work is also going pretty good for me as well. Getting some good hours there, and just enjoying the little bit of a slower period, until spring break comes about and we get more kids, at the mall and whatnot. But thankfully, like I said, I've been getting good hours, and it's been a fun time. I'm gonna take these glasses off actually because I keep seeing my reflection in my glasses. And now you can see my face a little bit. There you go, my face. Okay. So yeah, but otherwise, doing pretty good, can't really complain. So yeah. But and as for those you that were wondering, well, wait, what about your brother, Philip? Like, you guys run this podcast together. He's doing pretty well. He's looking at some possible job opportunities, career opportunities, to look forward to for the future. I.e. the test that he's going to be taking. And he's just getting all of his ducks in a row. That's probably the best way to describe it. So again, we're just gonna wish him luck on that. And but other than that, I've been talking to him. Obviously, he loves you guys and he wishes he could be here, but unfortunately, things come up. So, but from my lips, to your ears and to your faces, he's doing pretty well. So, but with that being said, let us continue on with the video. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves today, and obviously we looked at the release date, which was March 31st of 2023. So again, coming up on that 1 year anniversary. And just to give you a quick idea of the scores, let me just look real quick. So IMDb gave it a 7.3 out of 10. So, figure, you round that out percentage wise, that's, around like 70%. So, for IMDb, that's probably about average. However, Rotten Tomatoes, it was actually certified at 91%. So overall, it got a great review from Rotten Tomatoes. I'm just going to click on this real quick to see if it'll also bring up the audience one. So that was actually the critic score. So it was certified fresh at 91%, and the audience score also gave it a 93%. So we got some fresh popcorn there. And just a quick, some of the consensus and the audience. The critics called it an intensively good-spirited comedy with a solid emotional core. And the movie offers a fun fantasy and adventure, even if you don't know your HP from your OP. So basically saying if you don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, you're gonna have a good time watching this movie. So you should check it out. A couple of the audience reviews, saying is that it is a entertainingly blends action, fantasy, and comedy, all while respecting the source material, which is true. Obviously, we'll see that it didn't get everything perfectly correct when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and how the game operates and the lore and whatnot. But overall, it did a pretty good job of just diving into the source material. Where if you were an average D&D player or lover, you would be sitting and watching the movie, and you'd be like, oh, I recognize that, or like yeah, that makes sense, or something like that. Again, it is a movie, so we do not expect it to be entirely accurate. You could argue, could they have made it 100% accurate to D&D lore and the game? Of course they could. But I think they were going more of like a comedic adventure route versus like an all actual serious, like, let's put on the glasses and figure out like, what does this, what does that. But again, really, I mean, it just comes down to whether or not you want to nitpick that. And I guess that can go into like one of the negatives about the film is that like, they don't necessarily stay entirely true to D&D and the lore and how the mechanics work. A great example is when they are in the Underdark, and the paladin is fighting the um oh god, what's the name? The Then like mercenaries or basically like undead soldiers, and he activates his sword, which is going to give it like holy damage, and the Thayan activates his sword, which is going to give it necrotic damage. So obviously, when he gets slashed or hit, he's supposed to lose HP, right? And that HP is not supposed to be recoverable. Um, and again, because the paladin, lit his sword ablaze, or did some sort of holy fire. Once he killed those Thayans, they should have stayed dead, according to D&D lore. But obviously, they got back up. Now, again, did that obviously add a whole lot to the story? No, it really didn't, because when you play it out, for the rest of the scene, obviously they are going to escape the dragon, and escape the Underdark. So whether or not those characters lasted a little bit longer and kind of joined in the chase scene, you probably could have had maybe some more action or combat shots. But other than that, you're not really impacting the story, whether or not you're leaving them alive or not. As for the paladin losing official HP and not getting it back, because he's not in the rest of the film entirely. We don't know if he just sustained that damage, and he just walked off into the sunset and it didn't bother him one bit. Or if he didn't and he just suffered a burn, or a cut or whatever. um but again, unless you're really die hard about D&D and you thought this was going to be like 110% accurate representation, then obviously I can see why you have a problem with it. But if you're just going as a fan of D&D and the game and just, trying to have fun, then you know what, it might give you a good chuckle or be like, oh, actually, that was supposed to happen. Um, but again, I don't see that ruining your movie pleasure. So I guess kind of diving right into it, one of the negative things about the film is that it wasn't entirely accurate to D&D and its lore. But again, if you're going to nitpick that and you're going to nitpick everything in the entire movie, then you're just going to tear it apart and then you're not going to enjoy the movie at all. Again, same with one of my beloved characters, and my favorite character of Doric, who is the Tiefling Druid. Obviously, she shapeshift like numerous times, all in one go, like without any resting. And then obviously, unless you're like an arch druid, a druid, that is not possible. So obviously, people are going to complain about that because again, that's not accurate to D&D lore, so on and so forth. Um, but again, I mean, the scenes that happened, as she's running away from the Red Wizard, in I believe Neverwinter. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the name of the town, that our rogue character becomes the mayor of. It made for a great chase scene, like just shape shifting in the different animals to get the edge and escape the Red Wizard in the town. It looked really well done, especially when she turns into an owlbear and she just terrorizes her enemies, and just makes for good fight scenes, and just the creativity that she's able to use by shapeshifting in the different animals depending on the circumstance. Again, it all looks cool and it all looks fun. But again, if you're going to nitpick every single time that she does that and be like, well, actually, she can't do that. She can only do that a certain amount of times until she has to rest. It's just going to dampen your enjoyment. And then you're just going to be sitting there and you're just going to be complaining about the whole entire film. So again, certain scenes like that, yes, are they inaccurate? Of course they are when it comes to D&D. But are they fun to watch? That is the real question. And at least in my eyes, the answer is yes. They were fun to watch, and I enjoyed them. Obviously, I understand that they're inaccurate to D&D, and they didn't follow every single gameplay mechanic, but it was a pretty cool scene. It worked out the way it did, and it was enjoyable. Um, so again, that is definitely something that people might nitpick or say, is negative about the film. Something else that, might have been like a negative take for some people when it came to the film. Just give me 1 second. Find let me find it real quick. You could also argue that, the main antagonists, or the villains of the story were a little bit undeveloped. Obviously when it comes to D&D lore, I'm still very new. So as far as what importance, the Red Wizards, and the Thayans have to D&D lore, I'm not sure. So this might be my naivety talking. However, obviously there are a lot more well-known big bad villains, throughout D&D lore, um, that the movie probably could have chose from, and they decided to, fall back on, again, this might be my naivety talking, but on a smaller villain, maybe a smaller case scenario. Um, and to some people, they might have felt that as like underwhelming. That it took, only this rag band, a group of different adventurers to take down, this one red wizard. And you could even argue that she was just a simple follower of the man that she was trying to resurrect. So it wasn't even like the actual threat. She was just a red wizard. Um, so when you really think about it, it's like, okay, well, they basically just took down a red wizard. I mean, you could argue like hierarchy, maybe she's like an upper red wizard. She was among one of the followers of this individual. So obviously she's a little bit stronger than other red wizards. But again, I could see people's points if they were like, oh, it was a little underwhelming, who they ended up fighting and who the antagonist was. But I thought, the Red Wizards and the antagonist, I thought they did a great job. I thought they showed, potential and the different wizarding capabilities that you could see without D&D. And I thought they made for a good villain. I mean, I thought the fight sequence, at the end of Act 3, of course, was phenomenal. I thought it was great. Um, but again, some of it loses its trope when you see someone like Simon, who was struggling with his sorcery for the whole entire film, all of a sudden be able to go toe to toe with her when he finally attunes to the helmet. And it's like, did he really get that much mental blockage out of his magic ability to be able to be on par with a red wizard now? Like, so again, I can see some people's tropes, but for my personal opinion, however, I didn't really think that deep into it. I mean, I thought the antagonists were interesting. Just goes to show, that D&D has a plethora of villains or antagonists, and this is the one that they chose. And I thought it was really interesting. I learned a little bit more about D&D and the Red Wizards and the Thanes and whatnot. So if anything, it was a little educational for me. Um, but yeah, I mean, so that was probably something else. Somebody would have kind of complained about. When it came to the negatives. And I think the final point that I'm going to touch on when it comes to the negatives is going to be that you could argue that the plot was kind of predictable. However, I'm going to quickly rebuttal this and say, well, because it is D&D and you are, creating an adventure story, unless you are extremely creative and you could think of something right out of left field, most of these stories are going to start with some sort of cliche of, this big bad villain, that is trying to resurrect themselves or come back into the playing field, and your band of adventurers has to stop them. So you're just gonna see that. I mean, that is the classic D&D trope. Um, again, with the 2 hour and 15 minute mark, could they have done something a little bit more specific, a little bit more plot interesting? Of course they could have probably. However, for this, comedic fantasy adventure movie, I thought they did a great job. They covered whatever points they could. They picked a famous location in D&D. They showed us a little bit of the Underdark. They gave us some Easter eggs here and there. So I thought they did just enough to kind of throw everything into a melting pot where it's like, hey, you never saw D&D before? Well, there you go. Take that, and that will give you a little bit of introduction of a little bit of the world building. And yeah, like I said, I thought they did a great job. So, but for some people, I could see why, maybe they kind of left a little like lackluster and like, it was a fun film, but it wasn't as exciting as I thought it would be. So I could totally see that point. But again, me personally, I thought it was fine. Again, if I'm going in to watch a D&D movie, I'm expecting a movie about a group of adventurers taking down some sort of villain. That's just the way it works. So, moving on from the negatives, we're going to quickly touch upon the positives. Got a couple of different positives here. I first want to start by just simply saying that the characters in the movie were charming and they were delightful. So obviously the film features a charismatic ensemble cast, including Chris Pine as Edgin, Michelle Rodriguez as Holga, and Regé-Jean Page as Xenk. I'm probably totally butchering that, but um, the Thayan that played the Paladin. Um, so again, because there were some well-known names in that film, obviously we have Bradley Cooper as the halfling that Michelle Rodriguez is in love with. So again, we have a couple of well-known people in the film to give that comedic value, and I think Chris Pine did great as Edgin and the Bard and brought that comedic value um, to the movie. I thought Michelle Rodriguez did a phenomenal job as well. So did the actor that played the Paladin. He brought some comedic relief as well. Same with Simon and Doric. Their characters, their little chemistry, their failed romance. His awkwardness and cowardice. Her straightforwardness and just kind of having no filter. Like I just bringing all that together like in one party. Made it really enjoyable to watch. I mean, I just rewatched it for the second time the other day, and there were points where I was sitting here and I was like laughing at like the stupidest things because it was just so funny. Um, And that was definitely something that the movie had going for it. It was definitely a lot of humor. It was definitely that classic comedy that people are looking for. Um, Something else that was pretty positive when it came to the film was just again that idea of like that epic quest and adventure. So again, just really going deeper into that D&D trope of um, the story opens on this one individual character and you hear his backstory, and then he gets together a party to track down this artifact that he's basically looking for, to reawaken his dead wife. And in the meantime, he gets a little sidetracked because he has to now face off against the main antagonist of the film. So again, it does have that aspects of an adventure story, right? Like getting the party together, doing a couple of side quests here and there, right? Like helping Doric, rescue her enclave, um, going into the Underdark and, retrieving the helm. Um, you know, you could argue like, giving the money and the currency to the townspeople is like a side quest, taking down the Red Wizard, getting the artifact, but then ended up using it on Olga. Um, so again, the idea of it being like an epic fantasy adventure quest, like, can go both ways. Like either you can see it negatively as like, oh, that's a pretty well used trope already, and there wasn't much originality to it. Or you could just see it as, what, that's a pretty interesting story, and that was a really cool adventure that I just watched those heroes go on. And for me personally, I thought it was a pretty fun adventure. I mean, I thought it was kind of totally out of left field. It just goes to show that like D&D is just so expansive and diverse that like even the simplest of tasks could turn into the biggest stories. Um, and that is definitely true for this film, and that's just how I feel about it. Um, Moving on, obviously, because it is a Dungeons and Dragons movie, we're gonna have nods to the games. So we're gonna have Easter eggs from the games. Whether you want to point out like the intellect of ours, um, and so on and so forth. I'm sure there were plenty of others. I mean, we had in the arena battle, in the city, there was a party of adventurers that was participating in the games that were like straight off of a classic D&D cartoon. So, again, you have plenty of those Easter eggs thrown in throughout the film that, a casual D&D player would notice, which again would put a smile on their face and just make them happy that, the writers and the directors of the film, played it paid close attention to detail. And again, that was something beloved about the film. I mean, talking to other people about it, they appreciated all of the Easter eggs that were in the film. And again, it just makes it more engaging for the fan base and the audience, and it makes people happy. And again, because I'm still new to D&D, I didn't necessarily catch every single Easter egg. But again, listening to somebody else who is well versed in D&D, like explain it to me or whatever, again, just goes to show how many Easter eggs there were in the film, and just how much it meant to the casual fan, which was nice. Um, did I cover everything? Yeah, yeah, I think I covered everything. I mean, those were just a couple of the major points that I wanted to cover, for both positive and negative. Obviously, there's a lot more positive than negative. Now, going a little bit into my own personal opinion about the film, when I sat down and I watched it the first time, I didn't know anything about D&D. I never played D&D. It never interested me really. I started to get interested in it when I started working my job that I currently have now, and being close with my boss, he's very big into Dungeons and Dragons. So here and there, he would tell me different things about the lore and whatnot. And as I continued working there, I got more and more interested, um, about the game and like how it works and the world building, to the point where I was like, oh man, I would love to like sit down and like play a game or just like watch a game one day just to see like what it actually is in real life. So then obviously when this movie was coming out and then we started talking about it, I decided to go see it. And I loved it the first time around. I mean, I had nothing but good things to say about it. Of course, there were some things I didn't understand, like I didn't really know how the classes worked, um, and whatnot, and I didn't catch any of the Easter eggs. But no, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good film. If I had to rate it out of out of Sons, I would give it a solid 9 out of 10. To be honest, I'm only giving it that 9 out of 10 rating because not every film is perfect, and of course, there were some negative issues that I touched upon earlier, that could dock it that 0.5 or 1. So I could really go anywhere between like 9 and 9.5. Again, besides, of course, some of the inaccuracies that, come to, from Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe some of the pacing of the plot, you could argue, the half a point or the point here and there, but overall, it was a great film and I really enjoyed it. And because I'm starting to get more into D&D recently, going ahead and watching it a second time just kind of like bolstered my love for it. And I think watching the second time, I would definitely bump it up to that 9.5 out of 10 suns. And I think that would be my official rating for it. Um, I still laughed, just as much as I did the first time. I enjoyed it just as much as the first time. And now I'm starting to get into D&D. I'm starting to kind of pick out some of the references and the Easter eggs and like understanding how the classes work and the races work and just the world building, the world of Faerun, and some of the important cities and events and whatnot. So, again, it is making it even more enjoyable now that I'm starting to understand those aspects. For those people that, obviously don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons and they don't know where to start, this is definitely a great film, to watch. Again, this is your classic comedy, fantasy, adventure. And even if you're new to D&D or you have no idea what D&D is, you don't really need to be honest. Because again, it's not like they're rolling dice every single scenario they get into. This is just a adventure taking place in that world. So it is still an enjoyable film. It is still a fun comedy to watch. There are some pretty cool action scenes here and there, like when the paladin takes on the undead assassins, and then the final act when the party takes on the red wizard. Even in like the very beginning of the film when Dora transforms to an owlbear and roughs up a few knights, and then the chase scene throughout the city streets, escaping the red wizard. So here and there are plenty of different action scenes. Obviously, them escaping from the dragon in the Underdark is also another example. So overall, it was a great film. Really enjoyable. Obviously, I don't know everybody's names when it comes to actors and actresses of the films, um, but it was really good, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, so like I said, I mean, it was a great film, and that's pretty much it. I kind of just lost my train of thought um, as I was speaking. It would be nice if they made a sequel or whatever, or if they were returned back to this cast for like another adventure. I could totally see that happening. That would really be that would really be something. Um, and seeing, one of the things that I also enjoyed was because I'm starting to get into Dungeons and Dragons and everything, I've been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3. And obviously that's heavily inspired by Dungeons and Dragons. And, obviously the classes and the races and even the places like Faerun, for example, which is the world, was also in Dungeons and Dragons. So again, just seeing those similarities, seeing all the pieces kind of tie together, made it a great viewing experience, and I really enjoyed it. Um, I'm hoping Joey gets a chance to watch it one day, because I think he really enjoyed the film. And yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was great, and in the off chance that I keep rambling on, I'm just going to start wrapping it up because I really don't know what else to say. Like I said, I just think I covered really all my points and kind of gave my personal opinion, and like I said, this is a good place to wrap it up before I just start rambling on like an idiot. But thank you guys once again for coming out to another wonderful episode of Two Sons Podcast. Hopefully, you have enjoyed this little solo movie review of myself talking about Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves. Like I said, great film. Highly recommend to anybody that already knows everything about D&D or knows nothing about D&D. Definitely worth checking out. You're gonna get a good chuckle. You're gonna see a good adventure, good action, and just that little bit of nice fantasy aspect that everybody needs in their life, a little bit of an escape sometimes. Doesn't hurt anybody. So do highly recommend it. It is on Amazon Prime for free. If you have Prime, you can watch it on Amazon. And I'm sure it's available for rent and purchasing, like in the stores or just on other apps or whatever. But I know it is available on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime and you have that subscription, then you can watch that movie for free. Um, so yeah, please go check it out. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys think. Um, Obviously, if you're wondering where you could view this wonderful episode of me talking, you could find us both on Spotify and YouTube under Two Sons Podcast, so with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. I will set this video to release, of course, tomorrow morning, which is going to be Friday. March 1st, actually. Tomorrow's gonna be March 1st because I was looking at the thing and I was like, 29 days, but I was like, hold on, I thought there was 28 days in February. What is going on here? Oh, I think it's because it's a leap year, so I think February gets one more day. Ooh, that's interesting. But anyway, this video will come out on YouTube on March 1st, sometime in the morning, probably on Friday. So please look out for it there. I will send the video, to my brother, the file, and he'll just upload it on Spotify whenever he gets a chance. So if you want to watch it and listen to it sooner, please go check out the YouTube at Two Sons Podcast. Um, any updates or notifications about videos that we are posting, or just things that we see here and there, when it comes to social media and the nerdum fandom as a whole. You can find us on Instagram, X, and Facebook, all under Two Sons Podcast. That is with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. You could also find us on TikTok, which is something that I handle, which is basically where I'm going to post and let people know that, oh, hey, this new episode came out for Two Sons Podcast, you should check it out. um, so again, you can find us under Two Sons Podcast, or Two Sons YouTube. That is with an O, not a U, because we are two brothers. Man, that really is a mouthful. We need to like figure out a way to kind of shorten that. But once again, guys, thank you guys so much for coming out and listening to my wonderful solo episode. Hopefully it piqued your interest. Hopefully you'll check it out and tell your friends and family. And yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments below if you've seen it, what you think. And with that being said, I hope everybody had a great month of February. And I hope everybody's start to March is a blessed one. And, we start off all on the right foot. And, with that being said, I hope whenever you're listening to this, you have a great day, great night, great afternoon, just a great day. And, like we always say on here, folks, thank you again for coming out to eh, another wonderful episode of Two Sons Podcast. See, this is what I'm talking about, the rambling. See, this is why I'm stopping it. Thank you for coming out to another wonderful episode of Two Sons Podcast. And until we see you all in the next one, have a good day, and may the force be with you all. And goodbye for now.